hope you guys have had an excellent January, but it has come to an end. So today we're taking a look back at what I read in January with a quick thumbs up, thumbs down rating, and basically what I thought of my first month of 2015 reading. So I kicked off the month by finishing something that I was almost done with and knew was going to be a great way to kick off the year, and that is Shadowfell by Rachel Hartman. None of you, absolutely none of you, will be surprised to hear that I'm giving this a big thumbs up. This is the sequel to Seraphina, which you already know I loved, and I don't think any of you are surprised that I loved this too. I've been talking about it for a long time. I'm not rubbing it in your faces, I'm sorry about that. Little. I love the world that Hartman has created, I love the characters, I root for Seraphina, and I liked getting to kind of explore things with her in this book and sort of discover the history of some things and come to a place where she, I think, is feeling more complete. Obviously, it was a great follow-up, it was a great book on its own. Rachel Hartman is definitely an author to watch. If you haven't read Seraphina, you should go do that, like, immediately. And if you have read Seraphina and you are just panting for Shadowfell, it's coming out really soon. It'll be out in March, and I will be part of the blog tour for both Seraphina and Shadowfell because they're kind of doing a duo thing. Very early in March, I will be having an interview with Rachel for Seraphina, and then the following week I will be having my review plus a giveaway for Shadowfell. So definitely keep an eye on the Book Rat in early March if you are a Seraphina fan or want to know if you should be a Seraphina fan, because you should. And then the next book I read was part of my plan to read a lot of graphic novels at the beginning of the year, and this is the only one that I ended up reading. I had others in my stack, and I did read some later in the month, but I intended to read a bunch right at the beginning, and I kind of ended up being sick on New Year's and just went to bed early. But not before I had read the Stonekeepers, the first book in the Amulet series by Kazuki Ueshi. And I have to say, I was a little bit disappointed in this one. I mean, it still gets a thumbs up, but flipping through it, reading about it, and the enthusiastic note that came with it from Liz, because this was a Christmas present, made me think I was really, really gonna love this, possibly on a par with Z the Space Girl, which is high praise, so I was probably expecting too much of this, but I don't know, it felt a little chaotic to me, and something just never quite gelled. I will read more of the series, I'm hoping that it will kind of grow on me, and I'll probably even reread this one at some point, now that my expectations for it have been brought down a little bit, and see if that changes how I feel about it. But I liked but didn't love this one, and I was sad about that because I really wanted to love it. Up next was Tuck It Everlasting by Natalie Babbitt. I was part of the blog tour for this one because it turned 40 this year, which is pretty amazing. So they did a whole big 40th anniversary celebration in which we all discussed if we would live forever and what we would do if we could live forever. My take on immortality will be linked below so you can check that out and come weigh in if you would like, but basically this is a reread for me, and this is no surprise to anyone that I love this book. It's a classic for a reason, and I highly recommend it if you've never read it. And I was really amazed and a little bit saddened by how many of you told me that you had never read this. Go pick it up, you can read it easily within an afternoon, and it's just a powerhouse. And then, because I tend to randomly crave Juliet Marillier every January, like kicking off my year with a reread of Daughter of the Forest normally, I decided to branch out and read a different book by Juliet, and I went with Shadowfell, which again I was really hoping to love, but mostly liked. I mean, it was still really good, but it felt a little more shallow than some of her books, and maybe it's because it's YA and I'm used to her style in adult books and she really, really digs in there, but I think you can still dig in with YA, and so I was a little bit disappointed by that. But that said, that's just because I have insanely high expectations for her. Still really good, still head and shoulders above a lot of books that are out there, and I will definitely be continuing the series. And then, because I can't seem to break myself of Noelle Adams / Claire Kent, because it's the same person, I read Seducing the Enemy, which is part of the Heirs of Daemon series, because I had heard good things about this one, and honestly I've forgotten most of it. It took me a minute to even remember what it was about, so I tend to find that with her books. I enjoy them and I'm in them in the moment, but then once I'm done with them they're pretty forgettable. But yeah, I liked it. I mean, if you're into romance and some kind of steamier romance, I think she's a good way to go, because you get a lot more character development with her than you do with a lot of the other cheap romance books that you find in the Kindle store. But I'm not gonna lie, part of the reason that I read that one was probably because I was putting off picking up Legend by Marie Lu This was the Wednesday Way book club pick for January, and I think if it hadn't been, I probably would have abandoned this one, which I'm really sad about because I was really looking forward to this one and have heard such high praise of it. I got a lot of 4 and 5 stars when it came out, so I was really thinking this was going to be a knock it out of the park moment. It really, really flatlined for me. It did get better as it went on. I don't know that I'll read books 2 or 3. I've been told that the series gets better, but I don't know that I care enough, honestly, to continue. I found the writing and the world building and the character building really shallow, really kind of cardboard, and the whole thing just sort of unbelievable. And in a dystopia you need some solid foundation to build on because you are going to get kind of out there. You need something to ground it and make you believe those out there moments because the rest of the story is solid. And to me this always just felt kind of a bit cheesy, a bit over the top, and just didn't really do it for me. We did a live show discussion for this one, so I will leave the link to that below as well, and you will see that I was not the only one that was highly disappointed in this, so that was really sad. That was a sad way to kick off 2015's Wednesday YA roster. I mean, it wasn't awful. I've read much worse books, but it didn't make me care at all, and if it hadn't been for the book club, I probably would have just set it to the side. But because I couldn't, it ended up being a little bit of a time suck, so I didn't read much else in January just because I couldn't pick something else up when I was in the middle of that. It did kind of stall me a little bit. I have been reading and am reading the Olympians box set by George O'Connor. I'm not going to rate this yet just because I'm not done with the full series, so I'll be finishing it in February and I'll be part of the blog tour in February. So I'll be talking a lot about it then, and I don't want to go over the same territory twice. I'm going to hold off on giving you too much of my opinions yet, other than I'm really liking it so far. So I'm thinking this is going to end up in the thumbs up pile in February's Rewind, but we will just have to wait and see. But you don't have to wait till the end of February to see because, as I said, I'm part of the blog tour. So right in the beginning of February, I'll be chatting about those books. One last thing to mention, and it's kind of an oddball one, but I did want to talk about this. It's the Homemade Decadence book by Joy the Baker, aka Joy Wilson. Now obviously I didn't read this necessarily, but I mean I pretty much have. I think I've gone through every single recipe, I've read through a lot of the ingredients, and I've tried out a number of them. I got this from Birchbox back in December, and in December and January I've just found myself going back to this one a lot, and I have to say I'm really, really impressed. It has great full color pictures for every single recipe. The recipes are really clear, they're not too over the top in the ingredients or the amount of steps, and everything in it has so far been really good. Because I cook a lot, I can normally look at a recipe and know if it's going to be good or if I'm going to like it. And there are so many things in here that I've looked at and thought, oh my god, that's going to be delicious, or I have to make that. So this is, I think, going to be a go-to for parties and special occasions, and also just when I'm wanting something, you know, indulgent or a little treat for the family or whatever. This is one that I think is going to stick around, so I thought I would give that a mention for those of you who are also bakers or cooks or just really into good recipe books and want one that you feel is worth investing in. I do feel this one is worth it. And that was it for my January. Let me know what you think in the comments of the books that I read, and if you agree or disagree, definitely let me know. Don't be afraid if you disagree. If you loved Legend, let me know. Tell me why you loved it and why you think I should continue with the series. And while you're there, tell me a little bit about what you read in January. What were the standouts, or what were some that you think maybe should be skipped? And just chat with me about your month of reading. I will be back tomorrow for my February TBR, where you'll see what I'm planning on reading in February, so make sure to stop back by for that. But that is all for now, so until then, thanks for watching and happy reading!